Thank you all for joining the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities monthly informational webinar using the Post-Secondary Education Strategic Planning Tool with Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. My name is Drew Andrews, and I am the Assistant Director and Technical Assistance Coordinator at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. Our presenter today is our Executive Director, Dr. Janice C. Brooks Blackmore. This webinar is being recorded. The PowerPoint and other handouts can be downloaded from the chat section, which can be accessed by clicking the chat icon. And so if you move your cursor to the bottom of the window, a group of icons appear and there is a chat icon. Click on that and a window box will open on the right-hand side of your screen where you will see those posted here in just one moment. If you're having difficulty hearing the presentation, phone numbers will also be posted in the chat box so that you can call in with your phone and follow along on the slides through the webinar. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Janice.
Okay, do I have the ability to share? It looks like I do. Okay, is it showing okay? All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to kind of join us today as we talk about a component of the strategic planning tool used with our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. I'll go over the agenda for today. We will talk about the online strategic planning tool system, which so happens to include the post-secondary education program planning component. It also has, when talking about this strategic planning tool, I'll also talk about some of the embedded work that's within the system and how to use the system within your local context. And of course, we'll have room for questions and answers. Now I'm showing you this slide and I'll show you, we'll actually enter the planning tool, but I want to give you a little background information about the strategic planning tool in general. And an integrated component of the center's work to promote and supply the demand for FPCTVs is built on evidence-based practices to facilitate strategic planning through our institutes that we have twice a year, using this online system that integrates intervention and implementation science. This site provides a web-based system that assists state, local, and higher education teams to review, plan, and implement evaluation strategies to increase capacity and develop, implement, and evaluate programs to deliver evidence-based and promising secondary and post-secondary education and services. Importantly, this system focuses on applying the perspective of transition-focused education to improve the post-school outcomes of youth with disabilities. So you notice there are two sites. We have a K12 education, and the one we'll talk through in particularly is the post-secondary education. So to foster improvement grounded in that evidence-based and promises practices that I mentioned, our program planning component applies information generated from the Taxonomy for Transition Program 2.0 by Paula Kohler and colleagues, an extensive literature review from experts in the field by Lyman Duke and colleagues, and from Think College standards. The strategic planning process, so one of the things that I do is kind of walk you through what you are going to see once we enter the program planning tool, but I want to give you a walkthrough of what to expect, and then I'll actually show you what that looks like. With our strategic planning process, it guides you through topics that help you plan and develop or improve programs, considering things relevant to sustainability, like funding, program services, collaboration, and institutional commitment. It's an integration of whatever is available, our current available evidence-based and promising practices, and it provides a step-by-step planning process. Now, this strategic planning tool is designed for teams, not for solos. but for teams. IHE teams planning to have Florida Postsecondary Comprehensive Transition Programs have a site in the system. So there are many teams that already have a site, and others can also get a site. The strategic planning process focuses on 4 areas. We look at a domain under student, and that helps the teams think about who are our students, what do they bring, what are the things that we need to consider as they're working in a post-secondary setting. How do we plan to make sure that our students can be in an inclusive environment? So thinking about what is it of our program we want to think about the students we're inviting and how to integrate them in an inclusive post-secondary education setting. We also look at the faculty and staff. That's another domain. What is needed to get faculty on board to help us with the implementation of our program? What kind of skills do our faculty members have? What information do they need in order to support students, as well as staff within the university? What kind of support and information do they need? And thinking about our Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. Additionally, we look at the FPCTP itself. Now, not all our FPCTPs are at institutions of higher ed. That's why you see that slash, because some of them are through school districts, through career tech centers. So when thinking about your FPCTP or the institution of higher ed, what does that look like? How relevant is this program going to be related to the mission of the institution? And related to how programs and policies work, what do you need to be aware of, and how much education needs to be provided and or support to your institution to embrace this program and prepare for a successful implementation and a long-term relationship. We look at the concept or system domain as thinking about outside of the institution. So you've thought about the students, you've thought about faculty and staff, what kind of support and needs are needed, and the institution in whole, and that is every component of the institution. What about outside that institution? Networking with agencies and others that you may need to consider, different agreements, and making this happen. A major part of the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs is looking at how we can have our students exit with credentials that are recognized by employers out in the industry. So that concept and system is critically important to consider. Now, once we go into the system, you'll, in any program or any institution or team that is considering doing some planning with us or developing an FPCTP, you'll need access. And so you'll email us and we will provide you access to the system. We'll set up a site, but first you'll see, as I will do, when I go in, I will show you how you must log in first. And then with you'll need to log in using your email. And with that email, you'll have to reset the password. You'll get a temporary password and you'll have to reset that. So there's always a login and reset. So you'll be permanently recognized once you go in. Also, we'll go over the system framework. As you take a look, I'll walk you through the dashboard, some of the features of the system. It's the dashboard, taking a look at the overview and assessment and planning. And again, all of this will become real once we take a look at it. And with that assessment and planning, it really helps you assess your current status and the needs of the students with intellectual disabilities. It also allows you to plan and address how you will look at those needs. And again, in those 4 domains, you'll look at assessment and planning. Another feature of the strategic planning tool is reporting. You'll have the opportunity to generate progress reports as well as end of the year reports, and using some of the similar information depending on what your institutions might require, and of course also supporting some of the information the approved programs have to do for the center in meeting their requirements. Another feature is you have content embedded information in the system. You have the 4 domains of evidence-based and promising practices, as I mentioned before, and in each one of them, you will see some components within each one, and we will not go through each and every one, but we will look at some examples of what exactly is under student focus, the student focus domain, benchmarks under those. What are benchmarks under concept and systems development? And so you can see some of the areas that we have in this comprehensive planning tool. And you as a team will then target what are the areas that you'd like to address. And so again, each one of them have those those benchmarks in there, and with key components of how you might want to address planning and improvement. In the assessment component, we'll take a look. There's instructions included. So lots of times when people enter it, you're not sure how things work. We have some embedded instructions. We also have embedded reflective questions. You know, we always think that what we put out is clear and everybody understands it really clearly. But sometimes it's very helpful to put some instructions and also provide some reflective questions and, give some indicators. What are you talking about? That's always very helpful when it's new to you. And some of the team members from some of our approved programs can tell you it's always good to go back and take a look. But another key feature is within that assessment system, if you don't remember what you did last year, you can import information from the previous year. So again, we'll take a quick look at that. The nice thing in looking at some of the indicators, some of the key information is you'll get example goals, you get example strategies. And we've seen a lot of teams, when they start out using some of those examples and then reword it by the time they're actually planning or developing their plan. They'll reword it, but they use these as exemplars to kind of help them guide through how to maneuver the system and how the information might look. So you'll find that. We'll look at that. Special features within that system includes a place where you can upload links. So this is truly a system where you share with members across different disciplines, colleagues in different areas in your institution, who play a key role in bringing in data and information that is helpful for you to plan. So you'll have the opportunity to upload links. There may be documents that you want to share that is important, and they can be shared as PDF files, previous plans and reports, and we'll show you we've done some upgrading on our system. So we'll see where some of that information is located in a more convenient place. That would be obvious. You have Excel files that you can download. So you have Excel and PDFs, all of information that can be loaded in that site and available to all of the team members once you get in planning and when people go back in to review. It's always nice to get some strategies and think about how do we move through this and what do we do? In a minute, we're going to actually go through the system, see how it works, and hopefully that'll brighten up some ideas about what I've just covered. But in getting your planning together, you want to gather a team. And we really encourage team members from all across disciplines to have a perspective to bring in. When we're bringing a post-secondary program for young adults with intellectual disabilities to an institution, earning credentials that are recognized by employers and industry certification attached to many of them, who can help us with that? So you think about who would those team members be? If you decide you want a site, or if you have a site already, some of you, it would be helpful to go through and review the domains and benchmarks, because this is a very comprehensive program, and picking out a starting point will be critically important. Where do you want to start? As you look at those 4 areas, which domain do we want to start in? And even more so, which of those benchmarks, if it's not the entire domain, which of those benchmarks do we want to start with? And then pull together the resources you need that you think would be helpful in getting you moving with some momentum to move forward. Another strategy is, before planning or coming to the Institute, for those of you who will be joining us, have some discussion regarding the benchmarks. Think about those. What do they mean to you? After you've looked at your data and reviewed them, what are they? And then as you work together on your team and in the tool, taking notes, you'll put together at least one plan, looking at one solid goal. And really, when we're working through our institutes, if we get through 2 goals, that is phenomenal because it's extensive discussion and teamwork. So we'll go to the tool. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can get my maneuvering right. And expand this. And once did the wrong thing, of course. Here we go. That big. So once in the tool, and once I walk through everything, I will log out so you can see what the beginning of the tool looks like, where you will sign in and have to use your email and then change it, change your password than the one you've given. So because of the access that I have, I needed to go ahead and start off with a sample plan. Now you will have your actual site as a plan. Can you all see this okay? Okay, your site will actually have your name. It won't be a sample. It will actually be your institution's or team site. And so some of the new things that are embedded within this site, those of you who have approved programs, you might recall that some things were over to the side where we load documents. Now those are actually in the tool, makes it easy access to download in PDF and Excel files. Where as you're moving through the plans, you can actually download each one of those areas and make them full document. Can you see that okay? Do I need to expand the screen? Should be okay, all right. Claudia, is it anything that I'm missing in here that they might need to know about some of the new features that are included here?
I don't think so. I think that actually the links explains by itself. It's
Okay.
an easy access to let's call it reports, where they can access to the data that they have in the tool.
Yes. And so again, you see here where you can actually upload documents that you can share and add links. And that way all team members can always have this. That certainly decreases a lot of clutter via email and other places. If your team is working, everyone can be here working on it together. Now you notice I can click here on continue assessment. I can show history, or I can use the tabs above. And so one of the things I'm going to do is, you see, this is our dashboard. I'm going to go to the overview. For those who like to kind of read about what's going on or know about the tool, this gives background information and a nice overview that we have for the post-secondary component. When we go to the assessment, step 1, and you'll notice it has step 1, enter assessment data, assessment date, and add team names. You probably also noticed on the dashboard where I started, you can access this from another place in the tool as well. But here you want to start off, and each year we ask our teams, please update information, add team members, what their positions change, because inevitably each year we've learned that there's a new team member. There's always a new team member. And so we always ask that you come to step 1 and update first. And when doing that, this is, we usually have a person designated in a team as a note taker, and that person or the team leader will be the one that records that. Everyone will not have access to work in the tool. You will have access to the tool and all of its components though. On step 2, you assess. And take a look at this. You're looking at strengths and needs. So you'll talk about what's your current status. What is the situation that you are currently in when you think about student-focused domain? And as I promised, you'll see the student-focused domain has several benchmarks. So we have one that students pursue an inclusive program of study that aligns with their personal, academic, and career goals and interests as established through person-centered planning that includes the use of existing and/or new relevant assessment. So this is talking about person-centered assessment. What kind of assessments do you use? That's a benchmark for a post-secondary, inclusive post-secondary program. You have, in this case, under student focus, I think you have about 8. Yes, you have 8. Right down to students determine how parents and family members are engaged in a post-secondary education experience. So this is your team thinking about, here's some benchmarks that we need to consider under the student-focused area. How does that look now? Are we currently doing that? Do we know anything about that? What is our status? For teams who have done a little bit, I have a really brief example that shows, you know, you want to bring in data from last year. This is how it's written. I know it's tiny. It says, where are you? It asks you a question. Where are you currently? So you can help think about what will you put in your description. What are you doing in relationship to this benchmark, in any benchmark? And then look at your strengths and look at your needs. And so when we go there, as you put in where you currently stand, you will look at how good is the information, extent of the implementation that we know. If we're doing person-centered planning, assessment to kind of understand where our students will fit, how good is that data? How good is that process? We have reflective questions that maybe you don't know what we're meaning. And so here's some questions to help you think about it. And I'm just randomly looking at some of these selections. How do students make choices about electives if you're going to have your program? What employment, living, and educational outcomes are expected of students after program completion? It might help you think about that as you look at your current status and how well things are. And of course, these stars reflect how well, to what extent it is actually implemented. How well is that person-centered assessment? You might give it a 4, and that's fine. You might give it a 1. Same, you'll look at the quality of the data that you have on your person-centered planning process. Maybe it's not giving you everything you need. Maybe you have a pretty good, consistent process, but the data is just lacking something. So you may rate it a 1. And then that's something that you think about as you move through. Again, that's why it's important to review the benchmarks. As you move through the benchmarks and think about, okay, that's a 1, but is that a priority as we think about all of our benchmarks? And should we develop a plan? In this sample, there's a plan, but I'll come back to that in a little bit. So again, you have some embedded information that can talk about what do the indicators look like for this particular benchmark. Are we talking about the number or percentage of students in courses for non-credit? How are we thinking about that? That helps the team go through information. So let's say you've gone through and student assessment and you've identified one. You want to take a look at the faculty focus. Faculty and staff focus domain has their own benchmarks. Again, first one, faculty engage in professional development to adapt teaching practices that meet the needs of the learners. Is that something your program need to think about? On through benchmark 2.4. So you have 4 in this domain. But again, there are areas that you should think about. Each one has reflective questions. Each one help you think about where do you start? What's the strengths of that? What do you need to improve on? We'll take a look at program and institution focused domain. In that domain, starting with policies and procedures, the IHE program specific, K12 Outreach. How are you reaching out to the high schools so that they can know about your program? and how you're doing advising. So it's an integrated part of the institution. And with that domain, there are 7 benchmarks, right down to program evaluation is ongoing and used to inform FPC development and improvement. And we hope that is always the case. That's one of the reasons why we have the Institute every year. And then our last one we'll take a look at is concepts and systems. With concepts and systems, again, we're looking at the broader community. We're looking outside of your institution and how you align opportunities for networking that could strengthen your program, because the goal is for your program to be sustainable. It is an integral part of your institution. It's not something that lasts for 3 years or 5 years. It's just like your education programs, your art ed programs, your science programs. This is something you're looking long term. So you want to have relationships with colleagues and agencies outside of the institution. 4.2, the IHE's value for commitment to a diverse campus. That's a big one. Our teams continue to work on this. For a diverse campus community, including students with intellectual disabilities, is demonstrated in institutional communications, strategic plan, mission, statement, leadership messages, and system reviews. I mean, you hear institutions often talking about how we have an inclusive environment, how diverse our environments are, how welcoming, diverse, and inclusive are they for the students in our programs, those with intellectual disabilities. That's what our FPCTPs are about. And as you're developing your programs, you're thinking about this. These are not special ed programs on campus. These are programs at institutions. And so you want to keep that in mind. And benchmark 4.7, the IHE engages with the community. And so how do they do that? So we don't stay isolated within. We want to spread the word and make the media and let them understand who we are. So after you assess, again, you have reflective questions, you have your ratings, you decide you want to prioritize one and develop a plan. And in this example, we developed a plan for student-focused domain benchmark 1.1 and 2.3. And so this is what it looks like when you make a plan. And I will show you, the next step is to show your goals. And we even have help. We have help all along the way. So in this, as we look at a goal, for example, was written for this program to establish a meaningful credential leading to integrated competitive employment of FPCP students upon program completion. That's a goal. That's where they currently were at that time. And so as they looked at examples, they wanted to do some capacity building in order for this to be a reality. They needed to do some resource mapping, and I'm going to show you some more embedded information. And they wanted to do some partnership development to think about that. In addition, they can add things. So if you're not sure about what they are, here we go. You click on definitions, and on definitions, you see, what do we mean by the database decision making? What do we mean by resource mapping and development? It's showing you areas in which this program thought about, this is what we need to do. We need to do some partnership development, if that is what we want to pursue in our first round with this plan. So you have that. And then if you're not sure about other strategies, well, what can I say? You have a whole list of more strategies to kind of help you think about what might go under decision making, what might go under capacity building, resource mapping and development, and partnership development. So your team has all of that to look at, talk through, and discuss. And as you consider what your goals, how you will look at your goals, if you need to edit them and make your plans. And so what we'll do, if you have questions about how you carry out doing that, here's instructions. How do you make your instructions more information for you? That will help you with that. And again, if you wanted to look at your previous goals from 2019 in this case, A team could go back and look at what they had written out and look at the tasks they had identified, who they thought could be responsible for implementing the task, identify dates to do that. We do a progress report, which we'll show in a minute, to talk about the status and update, and next plan, action planning. Looking at what kind of products you wanted to do, what's that status, and so forth. So that's from last year. If the team, and again, that's helpful because oftentimes new team members join your team. And so we'll go back and think about, get back, return to step 2A. We can go back and look at the other part. You've done your planning. Now we can look at how do we do reporting? And so you have two ways in which you can do some reporting, which I mentioned earlier. Looking at those same goals, you can do a progress report. And we really ask our teams, particularly during our June Institute, we ask our teams to do progress reports, kind of where you are mid-year. Tell us what's going on. And you'll notice in this one how as each task is identified, a little different from what you saw on the previous screen. They're saying, hey, we need to revise this task. We need to drop this task. We need to really take a look at, all of the things that we said we were going to do. Have we done them? Are they implemented? So forth. And you do that as you go through each and every one of those components. So that's with the progress report. Maybe you want to do an end of the year report. And so when looking at our end of the year reporting, Claudia, that's one you always have to help me with. What do we click on that one?
Well, in that case, you can just go ahead and click on either of the goals
Okay.
where it says report progress for the student domain or for the
Okay, let's try this
faculty.
one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In that case, it's like it says progress report or the progress of the report because it was already started. If it's a brand new end of the year report, it will say start report. That's the only difference.
Okay. And here you have it, looking at the level, the status, and your end of the year report, how much it was executed. And again, laid out very similarly, but gives you an idea of where you are in looking at the end of the year report. I think I've covered all of the areas. And so that's the strategic program planning tool as we think about how you go through and actually execute your planning. So I'll come back up with this. Okay. So keep in mind that this strategic planning tool is team-based, and the IHEs has a site in the system. If you are new, you have a site, and we update the sites each year. If you're wanting one, we will create a site for you. To set up a site, we need the name and email address for the team leader or your primary contact person. And once it's established, then the team leader will log in and add all of the members to the actual site. Members definitely have roles, which would then have an impact on the type of permissions each team member has. As I mentioned to you before, the recorder is the one who can enter data just like the team leader can. All members can log into the site, as I mentioned earlier. As we move from year to year, your site information continues to be there, so it's never lost. All teams that have participated have the sites up there. If you were with us in 2018, I think when we launched this, you have a site and you have all your previous data. And we use this during our institutes to help establish sites and for each team. If a team leader changes, as I mentioned, like that first step, we always want to know who that is. Oftentimes at our institutes, we have a team leader who registered, and then we get to our institutes and the leader is changed. So we need to know as soon as possible, because otherwise you won't have access to the team, to the tools. So we want to make sure you let us know when things change. And at a point during the year, we turn the planning function off, which is currently off. And we try to turn it off usually around September or March. So we think that would have been enough time for you and the team members to go in, look at, do your updates, and it helps us get ready for the institutes that are that would be coming around in June and in November. And also keep in mind that it is a significantly secure place. We take great measures to make sure that the data is protected. You really are not entering students' name or data like that, but the data that you do have in here is secure, and particularly if you're trying to share documents and you want to make sure it doesn't get out to the general public. It's a safe place. We encourage you, if you're thinking about developing a program or working with your team to start thinking about enhancing some of the components, we encourage you to start talking to your colleagues now. We want you to know that we're available to support any discussions of program development at any time. At this particular time, we are bound to Zoom and other virtual opportunities, but when COVID-19 is beyond us or under our control, we can certainly do site visits. We love to do that, and we help deliver the message about the programs. The more often you review your plans, the more likely you are to move in your desired direction. So we say begin to collaborate early and collaborate often so that you can get your plans moving. There is a user's manual and this is a hot link. So when you look at this, we have a user's manual on our website that includes step-by-step details of how to use the strategic planning tool. Screenshots are very helpful, but it is on our website if any of you are interested in actually downloading. So a lot of people really like paper products or something that you can read through if you don't print it out. You can call or email if you have any issues with the site. We're always there and available to assist. And we'll at this time see if there are any questions before we move on.
Remember that you'll need to unmute yourself to be able to ask a question. So just move the cursor into the window where you see yourself or your name and click the microphone there and it will unmute you. Also, you can ask a question in the chat box.
Okay. Well, we'll look for questions. We'll see if there's any. And if they are, I want to tell you about some upcoming events. We have a webinar that's coming November 4th. Our webinars are typically on Tuesday, like today, but in honor of Election Day, we want to make sure that you knew about this one is November 4th. We do not want any interference with that. And the webinar is particularly for team leaders. And so the team leaders, if you have a team or you're planning on establishing a team leaders must attend this one. And so we'll talk about the Florida Postsecondary Education Program Planning Institute and the role of the team leaders for that. And you will register on our website, and there is a hot link for that. Another event that's coming up is November 10th. We're going back on Tuesday after the election, and the Florida PEPI virtual overview will be that particular webinar. So that is appropriate for all participants. So it gives you an overview of how we're actually implementing our institute this year using the platform of Hoover. And so again, the registration is there. and we want you to join us. So we must have our established teams, but any new teams, our institute is from November 17th through 20th. However, we will have pre-recorded information available beginning November 10th. So November 10th, so once you get registered, and our deadline for registration is the 16th, once your team leader has registered you, you will get an invite from Hoover to log into our actual platform. And you will see that we will have pre-recorded information, content resource information, as well as other that will be available beginning a week before the Institute actually gets started. So that's another way your team can start collaborating and looking at resources before the Institute to take advantage of that prior to the actual Institute. No questions yet, Drew?
I don't see any, Janice, none.
Okay. Well, as always, you can contact us in a variety of ways. Feel free to call us, go to our website, connect with us there, email us, Facebook. Of course, we always like for you to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So lots of different ways in which we can be contacted and connect with you. We want to connect with you. And so that is a brief overview of our strategic online tool, particularly the post-secondary component, post-secondary education component. And we hope to see you at the Florida Peppy. I'll stop sharing at this time.
Thank you so much, Janice. The tool really is very useful. There are a few steps involved there, but once you become familiar with the tool, you find out just how useful that it really is. And we're also working on a crosswalk that will be available to you that will help whenever you're completing your FPCTP application for the first time, or if you're doing a renewal of your application, and also your startup or enhancement grant, to really let you know just how there's a tie between the strategic planning tool and the application or the grant proposal. So
Drew,
thank you all.
I did forget one thing. I promised that at the end of the presentation that I would show them what the login looks like. So I'll just show that real quick.
Okay. All right, great.
Yeah. And so this is the login you'll get, and you will only have access to the post-secondary education component. So that is the login, and my apologies for forgetting that, but that's how it looks. Okay.
Thank you all for joining us today. There is an evaluation, and so if someone could put the evaluation in the chat box, we'll also be emailing the evaluation out to you tomorrow. And also there'll be a link to this recording. So if you have a team member that wasn't able to participate today, you can also share that link, and it will be on our YouTube channel. It takes a little time to process, so sometime tomorrow, probably after lunch, it will be available.
I have a question for Drew.
Okay.
I think this goes to you, Drew. We're shifting our now that we've got a permanent coordinator
Right.
with Diana. She will be our team leader for this. I think we swapped over once or twice the last couple of years. I think I was last year. What do we do to enable Diana to become the team leader, hopefully before the 4th or the 10th?
Well, we can do that. Just you telling me, you can either, like you just did, verbally sharing that with me, and we will send her an email, and that will, with that update. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important point. If your team is going to be, if the team leader is going to be changing, we ask that you either give us an email or call us and let us know, and we can easily make that change, because we know that sometimes a team leader cannot be there, or a team leader might change for an event, and that's something that Claudia can certainly help us with, and we can make that change. And I know that your team is already registered for the PEPI, and so that means that we have email addresses for everyone in your team, and so you all will be receiving an email.
So when she becomes team leader, will she be able to, if we want to add an additional guest from financial aid or something like that, she can do that, or does she then refer that person to you?
No, she can go in and add that. She can add team members on that very first page, which was on the team. You
Yep.
can add team members and their roles right there. Not a problem at all. And at any time you have a question, or just want some help through it the first time, we're always available and happy to help.
Right, right.
Thank you, Drew.
Uh-huh.
And so it looks like we do not have the link in there, but we will email that out to all of the participants immediately after we get this up and going.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you've learned a lot more about the strategic planning tool. Please be safe, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our upcoming webinars, and certainly your team at the upcoming Florida PEPI.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Bye.
you for joining us.